Welcome back to CrimePod Castle's Twisted Love series. Today we're taking you to Aligarh, India, back in 2016. And it's a story about two young people, Sania Ali and Rizwan Khan, who dare to love in a place where love could be a death sentence. So let's set the stage. Sania, just 19, full of life and dreams. Rizwan, a hardworking young man of 21, hoping to build a future for himself. And then their families. The very people who should have protected them, they become the architects of their demise. What we'll be exploring together in this deep dive is how something as pure as love could trigger such a horrific chain of events. How could families turn against their own children with such brutality? It's a question that chills you to the bone, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And as we delve into this case, I think you'll see just how deeply ingrained certain cultural beliefs can be
Yeah.
and the devastating consequences when those beliefs are challenged.
Okay, so before we get into the tragic events, can you paint a picture for us of Sania and Rizwan as individuals? What were their hopes and aspirations?
From the information we have, Sania comes across as a bright spark, a young woman with a fire in her belly. She was studying to become a teacher, which speaks volumes about her desire to shape young minds, to empower others. It suggests a yearning to break free from traditional roles. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. It suggests a real thirst for knowledge and a desire to make a difference. And what about Rizwan? What kind of young man was he?
Rizwan was described as a hardworking and cheerful young man. He was working as a mechanic, but even in that, there was a sense of ambition, a drive to build a better life. People who knew him spoke of his dedication and responsibility. It sounds like he was determined to make something of himself.
So we have two young people, both with aspirations, both looking forward to a brighter future. And then, of course, their paths cross. They fall in love. How did their families react when they found out about this relationship? Because it wasn't just a Romeo and Juliet situation, was it? There was a deeper, more sinister layer to this opposition.
Yes, absolutely. This wasn't just about disapproval. This was about a deep-seated cultural clash, a clash of values that ultimately led to tragedy.
Right. Because it seems the families came from different social backgrounds, and that was already a potential hurdle. But then you add in the cultural dimension, this concept of honor, and that's where things really take a dark turn.
You hit the nail on the head. For Sonia's family, this relationship wasn't simply a bad match. It was a stain on their honor, a threat to their standing in the community. Their whole worldview was built around this notion of family honor, especially the purity of their women.
And that's something that can be really hard to grasp for people outside of that cultural context, right? How a family's honor could be tied to a young woman's choice of who to love.
It's incredibly difficult, and I think it's crucial to understand that this concept of honor is so deeply ingrained in certain cultures that it can literally have life or death consequences. Any deviation from strict societal norms is seen as a betrayal, a pollution of that honor, and restoring that honor can often involve extreme measures.
And in this case, Sania's love for Rizwan was seen as that kind of pollution, that unbearable stain.
Precisely. Her father, Imran Ali, and especially her brother, Adil Ali, were consumed by rage and shame. They couldn't tolerate their sister defying their wishes, choosing love over their dictates. They saw it as a direct attack on their family's honor.
So they tried to force her to end the relationship. They issued warnings, became increasingly hostile, even threatened her, right?
Yes, absolutely. They tried everything to break them apart. But Sania, she was courageous. She wouldn't be cowed. She refused to give up on Rizwan.
And what about Rizwan's family? How did they react to this pressure cooker situation? Were they equally outraged?
Interestingly, no. Their reaction was very different. They weren't outraged, they were terrified. They understood the danger Sania and Rizwan were in. They knew the lengths Sania's family could go to protect their so-called honor. They feared for their son's life. It's quite telling, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's like they knew the potential for violence was very real, that this wasn't just an empty threat.
Yes, exactly. They were living under a constant shadow of fear. It's heartbreaking to think about.
So despite the threats, despite the fear, Sania and Rizwan continued to see each other, right? They clung to their love, hoping for a future together.
They did. Their love was a beacon of hope in a very dark situation. And it seems they even made plans to elope, to escape this web of cultural oppression and build a life together free from judgment and fear.
But that act of defiance, that desperate attempt to escape, it sealed their fate. It set in motion the tragic events of July 15th, 2016.
That's right. Sonia's family, they discovered her plans to elope. and their rage just boiled over.
So walk us through what happened on that day, what unfolded in those final tragic hours.
On July 15th, a confrontation erupted at Sonia's home. It wasn't just an argument, it escalated into a horrific act of violence. Driven by this twisted sense of honor, Sonia's father and brother, Imran and Adil, they attacked her.
It's almost unfathomable, a family turning on their own child with such ferocity.
It speaks to the immense power these cultural norms hold over people. It highlights the tragic consequences of prioritizing a warped sense of honor over basic human decency.
And Sania, she didn't survive this attack.
No. She was murdered by her own family. Her body was found in their courtyard the following day. The cause of death, strangulation.
Chilling to imagine the terror she must have felt in those final moments, the betrayal by those who should have loved and protected her. And then there's Rizwan. He couldn't have known what was happening to Sania, could he?
No, he couldn't have. And tragically, his fate was intertwined with hers. That same night, several people witnessed Adil, along with a group of men, abducting Rizwan from his workplace.
So after murdering Sania, they went after Rizwan, driven by the same warped sense of justice.
Yes. Later that night, Rizwan's body was found. He had been brutally beaten to death. 2 young lives, full of promise and love, extinguished in a matter of hours.
It's a devastating story, and as you mentioned earlier, it's not an isolated incident. This concept of honor killing exists in various parts of the world, doesn't it?
Unfortunately, yes. It's a global phenomenon rooted in patriarchal systems where women are often seen as possessions, their lives controlled by men. And any perceived transgression against these systems can be met with brutal violence.
It's truly heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But let's shift our focus now to the investigation. How did the authorities uncover the truth behind these horrific murders?
Initially, Sonia's family tried to cover up their crime. They claimed she had taken her own life, driven by shame over her relationship with Rizwan. But the evidence didn't support their story.
So what kind of evidence did the police have? What led them to unravel this web of lies?
The forensic evidence was crucial. The autopsy clearly showed that Sonia had been strangled, refuting the family's claims of suicide. And then there were the eyewitnesses who had seen Adil and the others abducting Rizwan.
Those eyewitnesses were brave to come forward, especially considering the fear that likely permeated the community.
Absolutely. Their testimonies were pivotal in building the case against Sonia's family. And there was even more. CCTV footage from a nearby shop corroborated the witness accounts, showing Adil and the group forcing Rizwan into a vehicle.
So the evidence was mounting against them. Was there any way for them to deny their involvement at that point?
Faced with the overwhelming evidence, both Imran and Adil confessed to the murders during questioning.
They admitted to killing their own daughter and her boyfriend.
Yeah.
What was their justification? Did they express any remorse?
In their confessions, they claimed they killed Sonia for disobedience, for bringing shame upon their family. As for Rizwan, they saw him as the source of their dishonor, the one who had corrupted their daughter. There was a chilling lack of remorse in their statements.
It's a stark reminder of the dangers of blind adherence to tradition, of allowing archaic beliefs to dictate actions, even when those actions lead to such horrific consequences. So let's move on to the trial. The evidence against Imran and Adil was strong, but did they face the full weight of the law?
The trial began in late 2016, and it garnered significant media attention. The prosecution presented a compelling case, weaving together the forensic evidence, the eyewitness testimonies, and the confessions. They argued that these murders were premeditated acts of violence, driven by a perverse sense of honor.
And the defense. What was their strategy in the face of such overwhelming evidence?
The defense tried to paint a picture of emotional distress, arguing that Imran and Adil had acted impulsively, overcome by shame and anger in a moment of weakness. They essentially attempted to portray the killings as a crime of passion, downplaying the premeditation aspect.
So they were hoping for a lighter sentence, even though the evidence clearly pointed to premeditation.
Yes, but their strategy failed. The judge rejected this argument. The evidence clearly showed a cold and calculated plan.
And the verdict? Was justice served?
Yes, it was. In 2018, both Imran and Adil were convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. The court, in its sentencing, emphasized the need to send a strong message against honor killings and the use of violence to enforce social norms.
While the verdict brought a sense of legal closure, it can never truly bring back Sania and Rizwan. Their story serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of these archaic beliefs that just masquerade as honor.
Yeah, it's a heavy truth to bear. And as we unpack this case, I keep coming back to one question. How can we prevent such tragedies from happening again? It feels like such a monumental task, doesn't it?
It does, but I think it starts with acknowledging the problem, shedding light on these dark corners of society like we're doing right now, and then working towards dismantling the very foundation of these harmful traditions.
You're right. We need to challenge the very concept of honor that places such a suffocating value on control and obedience, especially when it comes to women. It's about empowering individuals to make their own choices, to live free from fear and coercion.
Education plays a critical role, doesn't it? Starting at a young age, both within families and in schools. It's about teaching respect, equality, and the importance of consent.
Absolutely. And along with education, we need robust legal frameworks that specifically address honor-based violence, laws that recognize it as a distinct crime and ensure that perpetrators are held accountable.
It's about sending a clear message that violence in the name of tradition is unacceptable, and supporting organizations working on the ground to protect vulnerable individuals, providing them with shelter, legal aid, and a path to a safer life.
Right. And I think we also need to address the underlying societal issues that contribute to this problem: patriarchy, inequality, and the suppression of women's voices. It's a complex web that needs to be untangled.
It's a long and arduous journey, but it's one we must undertake. Sania and Rizwan's story is a testament to the urgency of this mission. Their lives were tragically cut short, but their story can serve as a catalyst for change.
We must honor their memory by striving for a world where love and individual freedom are truly cherished, where traditions don't become weapons of oppression, and where no one has to live in fear of violence in the name of honor.
This deep dive has been emotionally challenging, but I think it's so important to confront these difficult truths. It's in these conversations that we spark awareness, empathy, and, hopefully, action. What final thought would you leave our listeners with today?
I would say remember that change starts with each of us. Challenge harmful traditions, speak out against injustice, and support those who are fighting for a better, more equitable world. Let's make sure stories like Sania and Rizwan's become relics of the past, not echoes of the present.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. It's been a difficult but crucial conversation. And as always, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to our podcast and our YouTube channel for more deep dives into the complexities of a human experience. Until next time.